The 1790 U.S. Census, which excluded Native Americans, revealed that the United States population had grown significantly since the 1770s, reaching roughly 3.9 million residents. The census also showed that about 80.7% of the United States population was white, while the remainder, 19.3%, were almost all African slaves. 28 in terms of ethnicity. Only 69.3% of the U.S. population could trace their origins to either England, Scotland, or Wales, compared to other European countries. The U.S. population was ethnically and racially heterogeneous in 1790. In the same year, Congress passed the Naturalization Act of 1790, extending citizenship to free white persons of good character who had resided in the United States for 2 years and took an oath of allegiance. The law excluded indentured servants, non-whites, and slaves from naturalization. Despite these exclusions, the Naturalization Act of 1790 was arguably the most liberal naturalization law to date, as it created a short and uniform path to citizenship that lacked gender requirements, religious tests, skills tests, or country of origin requirements. The law excluded indentured servants, non-whites, and slaves from naturalization. Despite these exclusions, the Naturalization Act of 1790 was arguably the most liberal naturalization law to date, as it created a short and uniform path to citizenship that lacked gender requirements, religious tests, skills tests, or country of origin requirements. Antebellum period. During the antebellum period, immigrants were mainly German, Irish, English, Canadian, and French. These immigrants had different cultures and religions, particularly the German craftworkers and Irish Catholics, both of which created political backlash and prompted the emergence of nativist political parties in the United States. Beyond these issues, nativists also worried about wage competition, immigrants' use of outdoor relief, welfare consumed outside of institutions and other welfare programs, and the religious dichotomy between the new Catholic immigrants and the native-born Americans, who were primarily Protestant. Moreover, nativists were also concerned that Catholic immigrants would oppose slavery. Under the Lincoln administration, Congress passed both the Homestead Act in 1862 and the Act to Encourage Immigration of 1864, also known as the Contract Labor Act. The Homestead Act offered land grants to both U.S. citizens and immigrants who were eligible for naturalization and who were willing to settle and develop the land for 5 years.
Our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
The last consequential immigration law passed during Lincoln's administration was the Contract Labor Act of 1864, which allowed private employers to recruit foreign workers, pay their transportation costs, and contract their labor. Other congressmen refused to extend naturalization rights to Asians and American Indians. Ultimately, the Naturalization Act of 1870 only granted naturalization rights to aliens being free white persons, and to aliens of African nativity, and to persons of African descent. The federal government even seemed to initially interpret the newly ratified 14th Amendment, which stated that all persons born or naturalized in the United States, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside, to prohibit birthright citizenship for the descendants of Chinese immigrants. The Progressive Era. Between 1861 and 1890, 10.4 million immigrants arrived in the United States, mainly of Southern and Eastern European descent. This wave was more than twice the size of the previous wave, which had 4.9 million immigrants of mostly Northern European descent, who migrated to the United States between 1831 and 1860. By 1890, decades of immigration increased the foreign-born portion of the U.S. population to 14.8%. In this new wave, many migrants desired to work temporarily in the United States before returning home. While return migration was not a new phenomenon, lower transportation costs made the option more viable. During the early 1900s, many progressives argued that immigrants impeded the achievement of an ideal society, committed crimes, and abused welfare. Others proposed that the government had a duty to protect natives from immigrants who supposedly depressed innovation and lowered native-born American wages. Scholars of the era contended that certain ethnicities possessed immutable intrinsic characteristics that would prevent assimilation into American society. 75 To combat these perceived ills, progressives championed mandatory literacy tests, as well as various other eugenics-inspired racial and ethnic exclusions of Jews, Asians, and Africans.